Thanks, JC. You're on the Salespreneur podcast, man.
Stoked to be here. Thanks for having me.
Dude, I'm super thrilled to have you on. I've been following your journey through LinkedIn. Kind of vicariously learning about Gong through you and what you've done through 8 Straight. And this is our first time meeting, so I'm super stoked to get to know you more.
Yeah, I kind of like when the podcast is like genuinely a first interaction, because I don't think there's many more like surreal and informal interactions in a podcast. So it's genuinely our first conversation, and it's cool that people get to listen to it.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. So for anyone that's listening, this is like my first time hearing anything from you. But dude, for people that don't know who JC Pollard is, can you just give me a quick intro?
Yeah, like how quick? Because I can give you
Like
like
60
20-minute
seconds.
version. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I am a software sales account executive. I'm actually going back to Gong. I worked there for a few years, took a little hiatus, and I'm going back. Passionate about sales, but honestly, what I'm most passionate about is like personal wellness and health and that kind of stuff. So I'm a big runner. I love lifting weights. I love spending time with family and friends. I'm a really big believer in like the holistic person, not just someone who's obsessed with their career. So it's kind of what my content has evolved into. Like if you go back on my LinkedIn profile 2.5 years ago, it's like sales this, sales that, sales this, sales that. And now it's really evolved into more of who I am, which is kind of a more well-rounded, holistic person.
Dude, I love that. And I'm sure you'll tell me more about it later, but I love how your voice is so much more genuine, because there's so many people out there that are already great with the sales content, and it's all rinse and repeat. Like my VP of sales right now, he calls it like learning roulette. When you go on LinkedIn, you never know if
Yeah.
this stuff's good or not. But if you can find stuff like yours that's relatable, I feel like it hits home harder.
Yeah. And also like, I never ever set out to grow a LinkedIn following or start monetizing it at all. Like I genuinely didn't even really think of that as a potential avenue. So from the very beginning, my thought was like, I want to post stuff that's authentic to me. And now that sales is like just a part of what I do and I care about a lot more, like I just want to talk about the stuff that I love. So it's not even strategic. It's not like, oh, everyone talks about sales, so I want to find my own niche and kind of take it from this angle. It's genuinely just like I like talking about the stuff that I'm passionate about and care about. And right now, sales is part of that, but so is running and fitness and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, and I think that stuff just hits home way harder because it is real and it is genuine. I don't know why, but I feel like LinkedIn has like a really big BS sensor. Like you can tell when stuff's real versus if it's recycled garbage, you know?
I also like, I feel like I can tell when a post is designed to go viral versus when the post is like designed to add value. You can tell when someone's like really just trying to wordsmith it to get the most amount of clicks possible versus when someone like actually has something real to share. And I've had people ask me over the years, like, what has your LinkedIn strategy been? Like, how did you gain a following? I have no idea. There was no strategy. I think the thing that has allowed me to kind of stand out, though, is that I never fell into that cycle of like trying to chase the stuff that gets the most interactions or the most likes. I've like always stayed true to just posting the stuff I think is valuable and I care about. And I think that kind of like unintentionally differentiated myself from a lot of other content out there. Outside of that, I have no idea why I've gained a following. Like I really can't pinpoint it. But yeah, I think authenticity works in indie industry. I think it's extra hard to find on LinkedIn. And so I think that's kind of put me in like a unique position.
For sure. What got you started posting on LinkedIn? Or actually, you know what? Let's go back even further. I'm really interested in how you got started even in sales, because you go back on your LinkedIn, you were at Oregon State, you were like an athletic trainer.
Whoa. University of Oregon, not Oregon State.
Oh,
Big
shoot.
difference. Can't associate with the Beavers. That's a cardinal sin. No, yeah, I was at University of Oregon. So I like, this sounds super cliche. I wanted to be a sports agent. Like that is
Like
as
Jerry
cliche
Maguire.
as it gets. I watched Jerry Maguire. I'm like,
Okay.
I want to be a sports agent. That's what I want to do. Grew up loving sports my whole life. Well, my first dream job was an NFL quarterback. Turns out I didn't have the speed, size, ability, or instinct that could get me even close to that. So I'm like, all right, I'll just represent sports players. wanted to be a sports agent. So like all of college, it was tunnel vision on being a sports agent. I got into like the honors business program. I was the vice president of a sports business club. I was the vice president of the honors business program. I was the head personal trainer at the University of Oregon Rec Center. Like everything I was doing was because I wanted to be a sports agent and I wanted to get into a good law school. Like tunnel vision, that was the sole focus. And I was like so unwaveringly sure that that's what I wanted to do. And then I landed my dream internship at a sports agency. It was called Beverly Hills Sports Council, which is like a phenomenal agency. It's one of the top MLB agencies out there. Spent a whole summer in Santa Monica doing what I thought was like living my dream. And I was miserable. And I saw the agents and I saw their work-life balance and I saw the relationships they had with family. And I was like, you know what? This is like not what I wanted to do. This is not a life I want to sign myself up for. So I had this like very real moment of panic where I'm like, dude, I've taken the LSAT. I've applied to 15 law schools. I've got a full ride scholarship to Pepperdine in San Diego, like all this work. And I feel like I'm back at square one. I have no idea what I want to do. And this sounds so corny. Like every time I tell this story, I genuinely think people on the listening end of it will be like, yeah, sure. Like that didn't really happen. But what I actually did was I printed out my resume and I just kept reading through it. And I'm like, what's the trend here? Like, what is the thread that's weaving through all of this? And I look back at it and I'm like, okay, you were the vice president of the sports business club, but your job was to sell memberships to people. You were the head of personal training, and a large part of that was to sell people personal training packages. You were the vice president of culture for the honors business program, but a big part of that was like selling people on the program. And I'm like, dude, literally everything you've done is sales. Like you can run from it as much as you want, but I'm like, this is what I've gravitated towards, even if there's no sales title behind any of it. And so it was at that point where I'm like, all right, before I spend 3 years and $180,000 of living expenses going to law school, chasing a career I don't even want to do anymore, like let's lean into this sales thing and give this a shot. And worst case, I can always go back to law school. The LSAT's good for like 5 years, but like the last thing I want to do is go through that whole process and then realize it wasn't for me. So I just got an SDR job out of college, and yeah, the rest is history.
That's crazy. See, yeah, I wouldn't have even known that from LinkedIn. Have you shared that story on LinkedIn?
Yeah, but I post too much. It's probably gotten lost in the
Yeah, it's probably like buried.
in the abyss. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. So, and so you just kind of like deduced that it was sales, or did you know people in tech that like kind of helped guide you that way as well?
Yeah. So I had a brother who did really well in tech sales. He's much older than me. He's like over 20 years older than me. So I was at least aware of it as an industry, which I think a lot of people aren't, which is actually something at one point I want to start a business to address. So I was like aware that tech sales was an avenue, and I was aware that there's higher income potential. And I actually got my first SDR job while I was still in college because it was the COVID term and
Yeah.
all classes were remote and it was super easy. And I was like, I don't really have to wait till graduate. So I was like a full-time SDR with like 3 months left in college, just working out in my bedroom senior year. But that was
And
prior
that
to
probably
Gong.
helped you. That probably helped you land the gig at Gong, right? Like, do you think you could have got in without that?
I genuinely don't think so. And a few things. First of all, it was awesome. My last like 3 months of college, I had like a real income, which is amazing because like I was no longer like freaking out over an $11 Chipotle bowl, and all my friends still were. That felt pretty cool.
Yeah.
And the company I started at was like a good company, and they're still doing well. It was a smaller sales org. But what I learned there, like I think my experience there was instrumental in getting the job at Gong, and then also like giving me a greater appreciation for the level of training and enablement you get at Gong, because you just don't get that at a small company. So like even if I could go back and just skip straight to going to Gong, I think I wouldn't, because that perspective it gave me kind of really helped me have like a greater appreciation for what I had when I was at Gong. So I don't think I would have done it differently in hindsight.
For sure. Well, and I'm sure even just your experience in college and going through the LSAT, all those are things that help you stand apart. Just being able to do hard things, I think, is really important when it comes to getting good opportunities or good jobs. Because if you have a history of excellence, people are more willing to take you seriously. So the fact that you'd already taken the LSAT, that you could, you have this opportunity to go to Pepperdine. Did I say that right? Pepperdine?
Pepperdine. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, like, I think that just helps you stick out across a lot of other people. Uh, and then
Yeah, I don't
at
even
what
think it's
point,
about I don't think it's even about that as much either, like standing out on a resume. I think it was more because if I look back, like I could have gotten an SDR job working half as hard as I did in college and getting worse grades and not being as involved. Like anyone could get an SDR job.
Mhm.
But I think it's more so like I learned how to balance a ton of stuff. I learned that I can take on a lot and put a ton on my plate and still execute at a high level. So even if you like throw the external recognition stuff aside, the resume stuff aside, I think it was more just like me developing the skills on how to balance multiple things and me just proving to myself over the course of time that like you can load it up, you can take on a lot, and you can still get it all done at a high level. I think that's kind of like carried over to what I'm doing now.
Okay, that's something I'm really, really interested in because I feel like I'm terrible at balancing a lot of things. And it's actually
Yeah.
something I'm just barely focusing on now because in the past, even in college, I worked a lot at this door to door sales job I had. I was recruiting, I was doing all sorts of things. And I feel like my grades suffered because of that. And then even out of college, I joined a startup and it just kind of consumed my life to where I wasn't working out and it was hard to make time for my family because I'm married, I've got kids. And so, but now I'm trying to like actually make that balance because I feel like I'm getting more fulfillment out of that. What do you feel like has been able to help you find balance through college, your LinkedIn content, you're working out, uh, you're running 8 straight? Like, what kind of things do you put in place or routines to help you do
Yeah.
that?
So balance is an interesting word because I think it's like truly an unattainable
Oh, for
destination.
sure.
And so I think the reality is like there are things I'm sacrificing now. Like my social life is not as crazy as it potentially could be. I don't hang out with my friends as much as maybe I'd like to. Like there are definitely areas where I have to drop the ball so I can pick the ball up in other avenues. I think what's been critical for me, and I also don't want to come off at all like I've figured this out. Like this is an ongoing battle and it changes constantly, but it's like recognizing and having a deep, deep awareness of what are the non-negotiables in your life and prioritizing that. So I'll tell this story. I tell this a lot, but I think it's important. When I first got promoted from SDR to AE at Gong, I was like hyper obsessed with getting really good at the job really quickly. I wanted to be the best and I wanted to be the best quickly. And so I stopped doing the things I love. I stopped golfing. I stopped running. Actually, I'd never been running at the time. I stopped working out, stopped hanging out with friends, like was eating horribly. I was just working, sleeping, and I was doing well, but I was like miserable. And I genuinely had my 2 week notice written out and was like 3 days away from putting it in when I had a very candid conversation with my old manager who was like, just give this another quarter. You're going to be really good at this. I promise. Like, just stick with it. Very, very thankful that I did. But I think getting to that level of burnout that quickly and that early on just taught me that like there are things in my life that I will never, ever, ever let a job get in the way of ever again. And so if I'm in a career where I can't still do those things, I have to pivot. Maybe I have to make less money. Maybe I have to change careers. But like for me, eating right, working out, and prioritizing my health is a non-negotiable. And that's actually like priority one above my career. So it's not so much like balance and doing everything perfectly. It's like zone in on the things you really want to do well, prioritize them, and then acknowledge the fact that other things in your life are going to slip, but you have to be okay with that.
So why is health and fitness a non-negotiable for you?
Yeah, not to get like too deep. I know this is our first time talking, but so I lost my mom when I was 9. And so I think just having that kind of trauma at like that young of an age just instilled an awareness in me that like life is very short and you only get one of them. And I don't want to spend it behind a laptop 15 hours a day not feeling good. all the things that bring me joy and involve my body. Everything that makes me happy is like outdoors, being active, moving, etc. So I think when you compile an awareness that life is like very short and you don't know how long you're going to be here, with an awareness that the things that make me really, really happy are being active and staying fit, it makes it kind of like a no-brainer. Like there's no point in living a life where I'm not prioritizing these things.
That's awesome. I I have 2 kids. I have a boy and a girl, and I work behind a desk for most of the day, and that's one of the things similar. I mean, you're talking about how important it is. You want to live a long life. You don't know how long it's going to last. Just hearing you like talk about that, it's really inspiring. And I've heard you share that story before, but um, to me, I want to live a long time too, and I think that sitting behind a desk, yeah, I think it's kind of like this. I don't know how to describe it, but you don't realize it's a silent killer. I guess that not moving, even though like your body might feel fine, doesn't mean that it's actually healthy. And so that's why I love what you're doing with 8 Straight and just making it more common for people to take care of themselves. Um, and so I guess on that note, uh, we've talked about your sales background, how you kind of got into like posting on LinkedIn. What made you want to start 8 Straight and like that whole passion project?
Yeah, actually, let's go back to the LinkedIn thing because we were about to talk about that, and then we pivoted to kind of
Oh,
the
okay.
more
Sorry.
holistic
Thanks
career
for keeping me on
stuff.
track.
No, yeah, because I think this is a good lesson for people that are thinking about posting on LinkedIn. Um, if you set out with the intention of like getting a following or monetizing your LinkedIn, I just don't think you're ever going to get traction because that comes off so clearly. If you set out with a genuine intent to like share knowledge and help people, I think your content is going to work. And so what literally started my LinkedIn posting career was I had a lot of friends that were SDRs at other tech companies that weren't Gong. And I remember we would talk, and some of the stuff I was learning at Gong was like mind blowing to them. But it was like part of our basic training at Gong, and it really helped them perform. Things I was learning on a day to day basis, they just weren't aware of. And I was like, okay, that like if I'm learning this stuff that could help a ton of other SDRs, like why would you not want to share that? And so that's literally why I started posting. I'm like, I feel as though I'm developing a skill set that a lot of people out there could benefit from. That was the sole intent to me starting to post. And I think that's part of why it got traction was I think like people recognized the genuine intent was to help. My content has changed a lot since then. But that's why I started posting on LinkedIn. And I think that's the lesson for people is like, if you are considering putting yourself out there, first of all, get ready for some mean Reddit threads down the line. Second of all, like go out with a genuine intent to provide value and help people. And even if it never catches on, even if you never get a ton of followers, like if you're able to help a few people, you'll get a lot of fulfillment out of that. And that's what it's all about.
That's that's awesome. Yeah, I feel like those are the people that I want to follow the most that are doing it out of genuine care, and it really fosters that type of community.
100%.
Um,
It's awesome.
and so then I guess where did that turn into? Did you have like some sort of offline group with 8 Straight before, or
Dude,
how
8
did
Straight's
that?
kind of a wild story. I don't know how much you know about it, but like Kyle was one of my prospects. So Kyle Willis is my
Mhm.
co-founder now. He was a VP of sales at a software company called Mad Kudu, and they were one of my accounts. And I had a meeting with him, and I thought it went really well. We actually just talked about this on my podcast. He also thought it went really well, but then he got busy, and so I didn't hear back from him for a while. So I thought he was ghosting me. I'm like, I got to do something out of the ordinary to get him back. And he had been posting on LinkedIn about this 10-minute plank he was trying to accomplish. And so I'm like, okay, I've got an idea. So I made that plank video where I film myself trying to do a 10-minute plank. Every minute I hit the gong and gave him a reason why he should take another meeting with me. Did not make it 10 minutes. That is incredibly hard to do. But I posted that on LinkedIn and tagged him, and it went absolutely viral. And I think from that moment, we just had this like pretty clear bond because he is obsessed with health and wellness, and he's had a really successful tech sales career. So we got kind of close throughout the rest of the sales cycle. He ended up buying Gong. We had a ton of calls and got to know each other. And he just FaceTimed me out of the blue one day. And he's like, dude, I have this idea and I really want to start it with you. And that's when he pitched me on the very first iteration of 8 Straight, which was genuinely just originally an 8-week fitness challenge for tech sales professionals. It is an entirely different business now. Our value proposition has completely evolved. The level of value our members get has completely evolved, but like that's how it all started. We just had this fundamental belief that people don't talk about health enough in tech sales. It's inherently a sedentary and stressful industry. We're like, what if we created something that leaned into the importance of health and wellness, specifically for people who live in this world? And it's kind of crazy where it's gone since then, but that's how it started.
Yeah, no, and I've listened to that story a couple times, and so it's cool hearing it from you. And I do think that in tech, it kind of seems like if you're not talking about work stuff, then you're not really living, and that you know you're letting other priorities take place. When in reality, that's not true. When in reality, the whole reason why we want to make high 6 figures is so that you can go do other fun stuff.
Totally.
Which is kind of like the intent behind this podcast is I want to I'm making great money and I want to be able to convert that into something else. But for you, it's more like you want to be able to have balance in those things. I'm hearing you right.
Yeah, no, and you asked a good question, or you alluded to the fact that like it's been hard for you to do like multiple things well in the past. I think what's cool about 8 Straight is like full transparency. I have a few other side business ideas that I know could make significantly more money. Like I could sell sales collateral or cold calling courses, that kind of stuff. I could spin up a website tomorrow and make 5 times what I'm making through 8 Straight. I'm like 100% aware of that. And maybe one day I'll explore that avenue. But what I wanted to be conscious of is like, I've got a full-time job. The last thing I want to do for myself is create another full-time job that also feels like work. So I think my other advice for people who are considering a side hustle is like, make sure it's something you like and are passionate about. Otherwise, you'll find yourself sitting there like, oh my gosh, I have 2 jobs now. Like, how did this happen? Even if the money's good, pick something that you're like excited about and that you're passionate about and that you would do for free. And if you make money off of it, that's awesome. But like, that's what's been cool about 8 Straight is the revenue we generate from it is negligible compared to like the fulfillment I get out of the positive feedback we get from members and the transformations we see and that kind of stuff. So I always recommend for people, because I have had a ton of people ask me like, how do I start a side hustle? I always tell them first, you can't just like start a side hustle. You can't just like sit down and come up with something. Like you got to have a clicking moment or notice a gap or something like that. But then the second thing I say is like, make sure it's something you're not going to get tired of talking about and doing all the time. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself with 2 full-time jobs and you might not like either.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I can relate to that a lot. And that's part of the reason for this podcast is because I wanted to like kind of find what that next thing is. And by meeting people like you, I can hear those stories. But I got laid off in 2021. I was still helping build this startup, and then they laid off our whole team. And I had a friend who was like, "Hey, let's start this marketing agency." And I had no idea like what this agency was going to do, but I was like, "Yeah, like let's go start a business. That'd be fun." And I hated it so much. Like every day, I would cold call, and I was like trying to build out the website and build out the product, and it was so hard because I didn't enjoy it. It didn't align with any of my skills or my background or what I wanted to do. It was just that I thought this was a side hustle that I could go and make, an extra 3 or 4 grand passive. And it was great because I learned a lot about web building and, I had to try and cold call people for myself, which is different than for business. But I think that it's kind of, people make it sound glamorous to like start something, but if you don't know what you're doing and you don't already have distribution or customers lined up, it's different. Which the good thing with you is you were already creating distribution through your LinkedIn where you had people that cared about the same things as you. And so when you said, "Hey, we're thinking of doing this thing," customers were already there. Like it was almost like built up demand. And so
I mean, incredibly grateful for that. Like we've spent exactly $0 on marketing, which is ridiculous. It's like strictly funneled through Kyle's LinkedIn and my LinkedIn, which is such a blessing. It's been a good lesson that like having an audience is everything. It opens up so many doors. You need to treat your audience well, and you need to make sure you're not like becoming a sellout or you'll lose them quickly. But yeah, we're very fortunate in the fact that like not only did we both have decent sized followings, but they're also like perfectly curated for what we're starting. So like you said, we just had customers right off the bat, and no overhead. Like that's the other thing that's been awesome about 8 Straight is it's like 96% margins. There's
Yeah.
just no expenses, which is
So what's like the
incredible.
biggest expense for you guys?
Like our Zoom license and Slack license, like it's not much. That being said, we are now investing a ton of money in like we're rebuilding the website, getting the LLC formatted, all that stuff. Like we're starting to really pour money into it. But in terms of like operational expenses, that's a necessity, not that much. But we're choosing to invest a lot back into it to make it better and better.
What's the future of 8 Straight? Like, do you guys want to grow it to be a big business, or
Yeah, this is something we go back and forth a lot between because Kyle, okay, this is also a really cool lesson for people that are thinking about starting something with a partner. I have learned so much about working with a partner through this experience, and I've learned the good and the bad of it. In my opinion, the good like drastically outweighs the bad. But as an example, like Kyle is a dreamer. He's like, dude, I don't see why we can't get this thing pumping like 100K a month. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I love that idea, but like, what do we do today? Like, what about
Mhm.
the day to day? But I think it's so powerful to have someone who's like a really big thinker, who just like is eternal optimist and thinks we're gonna blow this thing up, and then have someone who like me who's like way more operational, a little bit more pessimistic and skeptical, who like challenges, and through that back and forth, I think our best ideas come. But to answer your question, like I think we want to make this the best holistic sales community out there. There are a ton of sales communities out there. Our niche and the reason that what we're doing is different is we're not just going to talk about sales tactics, because like I can't talk about that all day. I'll get bored. Like I don't care about it
Mhm.
enough. Like we want this to be an all-encompassing community where you can truly like transform yourself in your sales career. But like the key word is transform yourself. Like not transform your sales or transform your pipeline. Like this is about you as a holistic human being in your sales career and profession. So I don't know. I don't know what the end game is. And I also tell people like, I don't know if 8 Straight is going to be my home run. I don't know if this is going to be a thing that allows me to retire early. Like I have no idea. You can't predict the future. What's been so cool and has been such a blessing though, is I used to think the barrier to entry to starting a business was so high, because I've had a ton of ideas over the years that I have not acted on because I'm like scared of the logistics or thinking it takes this like massive overhaul to get something off the ground. This has taught me that like if you have an idea, you just start it and you mess up and you learn from it and you iterate and you figure it out. But because of 8 Straight, I'm now thinking like way bigger about what I want to do with my life and my career. And I've learned that it doesn't take much, man. Like if you believe in something, you spin it up. The worst thing that happens is you fail and you do it again. But it's crazy because like, sorry, I'm going on a rant here, a little
No, dude,
ramble
I love it.
sesh. But if you had asked me 3 years ago, like, what do you want? I would say like, I want to be an AE and then an enterprise AE and then a sales manager and then a director of sales and then a VP of sales and then a CRO. Maybe one day, like my truly biggest ambition was to climb the corporate ladder. And if you ask me now, I'm like, I want to start something that gets big. And that whole paradigm shift has happened because of 8 Straight and because I've learned that like you can do this. You can start your own business easier than you think. I don't know what that final business is going to be or if there will ever be a final business, but like it's been cool to watch my own mindset change and watch me kind of believe in myself more through this first side hustle or business.
Dude, no, I love that. Have you ever heard of emergent and deliberate strategies?
No.
Okay, so I had a college professor who taught me about this because and how it relates to your career, and he talked about how one, which is deliberate, that's more of like a doctor or a lawyer where you really have to go down a pretty narrow path to execute and have the ideal outcomes. There's another strategy in business called emergent, where essentially it's like making the best decision at the right time. and I might be butchering like this, so people can go look it up on their own. But emergent is it, it's almost more common with salespeople or people that have maybe like ADD where they can't focus for a long time. But neither strategy is better than the other. Like they both
Hmm.
have very successful outcomes. It's just one is deliberate and one is emergent. And it's cool to see how in your experience and in your instance, like even all the way back to college, like you thought you wanted something and then you just worked really, really hard and then like ran into a wall, found that wasn't right, iterate a little bit, work really, really hard, iterate a little bit, hit a wall, iterate, work really, really hard. And then you craft this lifestyle that's really unique and personal to what you want it to be. But it was something that, like you said, 3 years ago, you would have never thought that this is what I would be doing right now.
Totally. Yeah, you can't predict it, but now the equation changes. And you do you ever like have one of those moments where you don't know a word and then you learn a word and all of a sudden that word's popping up everywhere? Or
Yeah.
like you don't notice that there are any red trucks and you buy a red truck and all of a sudden you see red trucks everywhere. That's kind of how this business thing has been, is like now that I'm in the game of owning my own business, I'm having business ideas like all the time. I haven't acted on any. Most of them are like absolute trash, but it's been fun. I'm like, I can just feel my brain is like firing on a different level where I don't just see things and I'm like, oh, that's a problem. I'm like, oh, how could you address that with business? And it's just been cool. Like I'm watching myself evolve because now I've learned like you can do it. You can start a business and you can find success quickly. Um, yeah, it's been cool. Like here's an example. This is silly, but like, and this is an example of a terrible business idea, but you know how on a plane you wear a seatbelt so that you don't go flying when it's turbulent?
Hmm.
Well, babies don't wear a seatbelt. And I, for some reason, am always the guy sitting behind the crying baby on a plane. I call it my civic duty. Like I always end up in that seat for some reason. But I had this idea of like, what if you made a tiny little baby seatbelt that latched onto the main seatbelt and you call it Fly Baby? And like that's a terrible idea. But like I swear 3 years ago, I wouldn't have even been thinking about like an idea to address that. But now I'm just like always like, oh, how could I start a business around this? That's like a really tiny example, but like I truly have felt like a rewiring in my system of like, oh, I want to start a business. I want to start more businesses. Like this is a pretty addictive thing and it's been fun to learn.
Yeah.
Nobody steal Fly Baby, please. That's my idea.
Okay, yeah. If anyone's listening, we'll strike it. Just kidding.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. Well, I'm curious too if you have any other advice. A lot of people listening to this are full-time sales reps and making 150 to 200K a year, really interested in finding like something else that they could do. And you've already mentioned a lot of advice, but if you could summarize it in like 30 seconds for somebody that's trying to start a side hustle, what would you say to that person?
Yeah. Step one, and this is a shameless 8 straight plug, but like surround yourself with people that want more. Be really conscious of who's in your circle. People that just want to follow the 9 to 5 and contribute to their 401k and have no bigger aspirations. You don't have to weed them out of your life, but like over index on the people that want to make it big and want to take big swings. So that's like step one. Surround yourself with people that are on a similar trajectory as you. That will take you far. Doors will open because of those people. The second thing is pay really close attention to the things that like bring you energy and fill you up and double down on those. I would recommend your first side hustle is something you're passionate about so that it doesn't become another job quickly. And then step 3 is start paying like really close attention to gaps. What do you see that you would want that isn't out there? What feels like it's missing? Is there something you can do to address that? And the fourth and final step, I'd say, and this is the most important one and one that I'm grateful to have a partner that pushes me on, is just start it. Don't wait till the website is perfect. Don't wait until you have every single product, feature, and functionality figured out. Like spin it up and launch it and go sell it and then make it better. Paralysis of analysis is like a very real thing with starting a small business, and it can literally stymie you to the point where you never ever start it. Just start it. The worst that happens is it fails and you do it again.
Yeah, I love that. So surround yourself with great people, find something that you enjoy, find a gap that you can solve, and then just start it. Don't let analysis paralysis kick in.
Just start it.
That's
Yep.
that's it. Cool. Well, thanks so much for joining me, JC. It's been a blast getting to know you, and hopefully we'll get to do more stuff like this in the future.
Yeah, man. I appreciate your time. Thanks for having me on.
Stopping. Cool, dude. That was fun.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Do you have like a pre-recorded intro and outro in